Hey guys, it's James, and today I wanted to share with you the math behind retiring early with VOO. And when I mean retire, I don't exactly mean just stop working and sit on your hands. I mean having a portfolio that's going to give you financial independence. And when I mean retire, I mean before 59 and a half in a taxable income account that's going to pay you about $50,000 a year. And $50,000 a year is about the national average salary in the United States. You can retire with more and you can retire with less depending on where you live at in the world. So the purpose of this video is me to show you how fast you can get to that $50,000 a year with a modest monthly addition. And we'll start with about $500 a month. And then we'll see what type of monthly addition you would need if you wanted to retire in about 5 to 10 years. And again, when I mean retire, I mean to be financially independent. And to be able to achieve that financial independence with a portfolio, you do need a portfolio somewhere between 3 to 6% dividend yield if you don't want the portfolio to be some extremely large, unattainable number for the average American. Now, we know VOO only has about a 1.4 to a 1.6% dividend yield. So what we'll have to do is once we get to a certain portfolio value, we'll have to switch our portfolio over to having a 3 to 6% yield. And for the purposes of this video, we're going to switch over to a portfolio that has about a 5% dividend yield. With a 5% dividend yield, you would need about $1 million portfolio to be able to achieve that $50,000 a year in dividends. So how are we going to do that? Well, I did build a few spreadsheets to be able to show with a monthly addition how fast VOO is going to get us to that $1 million. And then I also built a spreadsheet where you can take various different income ETFs or any income ETF in general and be able to determine your total overall portfolio dividend yield, which we're going to target to be about 5%. And then we're going to take a look at that portfolio and see what it would give us in our retirement or our financial independence. So let's go ahead and jump over to the spreadsheet. Okay guys, we are over on the spreadsheet, and now I know this can look a little overwhelming if it is the first time you have seen this spreadsheet, but basically the yellows are our inputs and the greens are our outputs. We have our portfolio value graph here with a 10-year figure calculating out for 10 years. We also have our income graph for our two different funds. But let's go back over to the inputs. We have two different portfolios we can compare on this spreadsheet. We're going to start with portfolio 1. Like we said, we're going to see how fast we can get to $50,000 a year or $1 million portfolio with VOO. We are going to assume VOO is going to have about a 1.5% dividend yield, a 0.03% expense ratio, and we're going to play around with the growth and contribution numbers. We are going to assume that we have an annual growth rate for VOO of about 10%. We are going to reinvest dividends because we want to get to the $1 million figure as fast as possible. And now I chose $40,000 as our initial deposit because the national average retirement account for someone who is about 30 to 40 years old is going to be sitting around $40,000. So let's go ahead and play around with monthly addition. Let's assume $500 a month for our monthly addition to start. How fast is that going to get us to $1 million? Well, it does not get us to $1 million in 10 years. You can see we already have our portfolio 2 in here, our retirement portfolio at $1 million up here. And over on the income graph, our $1 million is paying us $50,000 a year, but we cannot get there with VOO in 10 years. How fast can we get there? Let's come over to the data. We have our first fund, VOO, with dividends reinvested. We come down to our fund balance, and it crosses that $1 million mark in about 22 years. So let's come over here and change the monthly addition, and we would need about $4,500 a month to be able to hit that $1 million mark in about 10 years. Let's say you did have the patience and you added $500 a month with that 10% growth rate. You would hit it in about 22 years. Let's say you did hit that $1 million mark. Now let's see what a portfolio would look like if you did switch it over to a 5% overall dividend yield. This is another sheet on our workbook here, and for the purposes of this video, we are going to see how much SCHD and JEPI, these two different ETFs with a 3.1% dividend yield for SCHD and a 7.5% dividend yield for JEPI with these expense ratios in these 5-year CAGR numbers, what that would look like. So we will change our VOO holding from 100% to about 20%, change SCHD to about a 30% holding, and JEPI to about 50%. We come down here to the totals. Our average portfolio dividend yield is 4.98%. Our average expense ratio for our portfolio is 0.2, and our average portfolio growth is going to be about 4.6. Let's come back over to our retirement portfolio and see what that would look like. Let's say we now hit our 4.98% with SCHD, JEPI, and VOO portfolio. Our expense ratio was about 0.2%. We assume that we are not going to add any new monies to our portfolio. The growth rate was about 4.6%. Let's go ahead and assume a more modest number of about 4%. We are not going to reinvest dividends because that's what we are paying ourselves for our financial independence. We hit that $1 million, whether it took 10 years or 22 years. This is what our portfolio would look like. We have a portfolio with VOO, SCHD, and JEPI, and we have a portfolio that is not going to depreciate over time and is going to pay you about $50,000 a year, and every year we are going to have slightly more in our payouts. If you guys wanted to play around with these numbers yourself, change the monthly edition, see how fast you can get to financial independence, I have this calculator available on my Patreon. You can go over to my Patreon, copy this calculator, simply go to File, make a copy, and you will have your own editable copy without changing anything on the main copy here. And then I update the calculator about monthly. So the current version available is going to be June's 2022's version. I usually add updates to it throughout the month and then put the new version between the 1st and the 5th of the month. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, I did the same thing for QYLD, XYLD, DEVO, JEPI, and a dividend portfolio. And you can check that out. The links will be in the description. And with that, thanks for watching.